Hey everybody, welcome to Intro to Media. I have a challenge for you that I will share in a moment. If you can do it successfully, you can complete the course with an A. You don't have to do anything else, so wait for it. Okay, welcome to week 2. I promised you a challenge. I think it's a fun one, maybe a frustrating one, but it illustrates a point, illustrates a lot of the things that I want to talk about this week. So just as a recap, I want you to keep looking at the syllabus and be reading sort of these definitions so that you start to understand them. I hope that you do understand them, and so I'm not going to reread them for you on these videos, but if you have questions, especially after watching this and after trying to answer the questions I put on the website, if you still have questions, share them and we'll make sure that it becomes clear as we go. But I know it's going to be a little difficult at the beginning, especially if we're not meeting in person. It's harder to, go back and forth as a dialogue. But anyway, just as a reminder, last week you should learn the basics of what is new media and what is a text. And so there's a bit of history that I hope you understand better now. This week I want you understanding better, again, not being the expert on, but just understanding better, access, industry, infrastructure, mass, and ordinary. So anyway, first let's get to this challenge that I think will help illustrate a lot of these things. You have a cell phone, I assume. You're probably watching this on a cell phone, maybe it's on your computer, but either way, I want you to think about your cell phone for a moment, and I want you to think about where it comes from. So my challenge to you is to simply tell me where it comes from, and I will give you an A in the class. You don't have to do anything else. The only requirement, though, is that I want to literally know where it comes from. So, and I'm not just one step, I want the whole way back. So you might be saying, well, this is an Apple phone or it's an iPhone, so Apple made it, so it comes from Apple. Okay, that's a start. You don't get your A yet. Now, Apple obviously is a company that exists. Maybe you have an Android. Maybe you have a Xiaomi phone from China. Whatever it is that you have, it's from probably a company, and probably you got it at, Best Buy, Walmart, or wherever you're picking up phones. Maybe you ordered something from Amazon, the phone, and it came to you. So this is where things get tricky, and this is where we'll start thinking about things like industry, access, infrastructure, right? So I'm hoping that I can illustrate this through this challenge. This is the major challenge of the week. If you can do this, like I said, A in the class, you're done. You can step away and you can say that you're a master of Intro to Media. If you can't do this, it's okay. Try. Don't forget your other questions online, though. So anyway, let's start, right? Your phone, maybe let's assume it's an iPhone. Let's assume you got it, let's say, from Amazon. So you could say, first it comes from Amazon. Well, okay. But if I wanted to go back and trace it back, where is Amazon? So that gets a little confusing at first. Where is Amazon? Okay, well, maybe there is a warehouse in Atlanta, and you're outside of Atlanta, and so it's fair to assume that it came from there. Can you or can you not prove that, at least? Maybe you can by looking at the shipping of your phone, if that's still available to you. Especially, places like Amazon show you when it's shipped. Usually they show you where it's shipping from, at least what city. But then it gets a little bit more complicated, right? So where did it come from before that? Because I want you to trace your phone back to the start. So you could say maybe it came from Amazon, maybe it came from a warehouse in Atlanta. Well, how did it get to a warehouse in Atlanta? Well, you could assume it came from California because that's where Apple's headquarters are. But more likely it came from China. This is where it gets extra difficult because I want you to be able to say where, like if I were going to buy a train ticket or a plane ticket or a boat ticket or whatever, you get boat tickets now? I'm not sure. If I wanted to go where the phone came from, like trace it back, if I wanted to do a tour of where your phone has been, and again, your phone, not general iPhones, but your phone. You have a serial number, you should be able to trace it back at least to the company, but then where does it come from, right? What are you involved in? This is where we get into infrastructure and access. So somehow you were able to give money, probably to Apple or Amazon or both, and you were able to get a phone. But what are all the steps that had to happen in order for that to happen? The more you look at this, the more you find you don't have access to this. And I actually have another class, I'm not teaching it this term, but I have a class called Intro to the Information Society. And we talk a lot about this. In fact, that's the major project. It's not your phone, but to try to trace back something. And I will tell you that nobody's ever succeeded. I want you to, and if you do, great. I promise I will give you that A, and you don't have to do anything else, no essays, no nothing. But I've never seen it happen successfully with details. So, why is that? Why is it that you can literally tap your phone against something and money will go to somebody? But if you want to find out where your iPhone came from, beyond Amazon or the post office, it gets really difficult. There are a few things that we can talk about, and I'll put these in the videos. So I want you to watch these other videos. I won't explain all about Foxconn, and I won't explain all about coltan and the Congo, because those two things are, among other things, some of the more troubling, some of the more obscure, hidden ideas behind your phone, my phone. I mean, I'm not separate from this. So I just want to know, I want you to know that even though this might be somewhat depressing to think about, we're all in this together. And then the question is, there's a few questions, but the main question I want you to think about is, should you know where your phone comes from? Because I think a lot of people are quick to say, as long as my phone works and I pay this money and I get this phone, that's all I need to know. But what if you are, in some very, very small way, responsible for massive suicides from workers who are experiencing horrible conditions that you would really never wish upon your enemy, and so because they're in this condition, they're killing themselves? What if you and I and others are a little bit responsible for that? Because after all, they wouldn't be in these stores, or they wouldn't be in these factories making these phones if people like us weren't buying these phones. Well, then you could say, well, I don't care about that, or I don't want to know about that, and then you're a horrible human being. But more likely, you start to think, well, I don't want to know because that, hurts my self-image as a nice person, someone who doesn't support horrible working conditions. That's China, right? They have horrible working conditions, or that's these overseas places that I have no relation to, except you do have a relation to it. Probably most of your stuff is coming from it, but it's hidden. And we talked earlier about media as being an extension of ourselves, right? So my glasses, right? They extend my eyes. So my eyes can't see great into the distance, or they get tired when reading. These glasses help extend their ability, their strength, their vision, my vision. That's how media works, right? So the glasses are a medium. More commonly, news media let me be in Washington when I'm not physically in Washington to understand what's going on better there. They let me travel to, or anywhere really, around the world where things are happening so that I don't physically have to be there, but it's almost as if I were there because I can see what's happening, I can hear what's happening, so that it extends my eyes, it extends my ears. That's how media work. But then we get this alternative where we should be able to, pretty much with the media we have, go anywhere, see anything. But we have a very limited, especially in the US, especially in a sort of consumer-driven market economy, capitalist market economy, where certain things we have quick access to, right? Like if I want any show virtually, I can just ask Google to play it and my TV starts playing that show. So that is incredible access. That's because, infrastructure, and we'll get into other things. But then if I want to say okay, where's my phone really from? Not just where did it ship from last, but where is it really from? Does this phone have any connection to a suicide, to somebody dying in a coltan mine in the Congo? These are questions we don't often think to ask, probably, I would assume, until this class. But once somebody like me, some jerk says hey, have you thought about this? And now you have to think about this because, it's in your head now. You should be able to answer that, right? You should know if your phone or if your computer or if anything really is related to things that you don't want to be related to, or connected to things that you don't want to be connected to. So again, if you think of old school interactions, right? Somebody would, let's say, be a shoemaker. and they would make shoes. And then you would go to that person and be like, hey Bill, I need some more shoes. Can I buy these shoes from you? And he can say, yeah, here you go. This is where I make them. This is the cow that I made it from, the leather. And so you can kind of see all these things. And even though that's extending your ability, it's extending it in a very closed way, right? When you think about an old school village. Now, if you want shoes, what do, right? More likely you go online. Maybe you're traditional and you go to a store, but those almost guaranteed do not come from this country. So you definitely don't know who's making them. And so that extends your ability, but it also pushes us away from each other, right? And I ask people also when they say like, these people choose to work in these garbage factories where they're treated horribly and where maybe a bunch of them try to kill themselves because that seems like a better alternative. Not my fault, right? I think it's interesting to think like if that situation were going on beside you, if people were in horrible daily living conditions beside you, like literally, you saw them going to work and back or going to school and back every day, then I think you'd be more concerned, right? So media helps extend things, but it also helps extend what, you could call a barrier or a bunch of intermediaries where we don't necessarily see these things. And that is where this idea of the mass can get really important. So we have masses of people in one place in the world, masses of people in the other. They sort of talk to each other, but there are all these intermediary steps, and these intermediary steps push certain access, right? Like you want these cheap shoes, here you go, there's a million colors, pick from them, tap your phone and you'll have a new pair. So we have access there. But then if you want to know, hey, is a person making these shoes, or are people who's making these shoes, right? Because that's the thing. We now have machines that make the shoes, but then we have people working the machines or maybe cleaning up after the machines, and so they don't even know what shoes they've made, right? Like you could work at a Nike factory in Taiwan or something, and you would have no idea if you saw a pair of the shoes that you made, because maybe you're just the guy who like stamps this thing at the end, and so you're not really making the shoe, you're putting stamps on a bunch of shoes for whatever period of time you have to work per day. In some ways this is really good. And so the only other video I want to share with you is the one about Ford. So Ford and Fordism allowed a lot of this kind of stuff to happen, because think about the opposite, or not the opposite, but a different way of doing things. A different way of organizing society would be that, you have to learn all the mechanics, all the metal work, all of the different electrical issues to make a car. And so you and your buddies make a car from scratch. That car would probably cost in the millions of dollars. So that's not a very realistic thing to do based on our current society, right? Instead, you can make a factory if you have the finances and if you have the wherewithal and a bunch of other things, right? Make a factory where nobody knows how to make a car, like a full car. Instead, you have some people who know how to advertise better, some people who can write things better to, work with others, to communicate with others. Some people know how, or they learn how to stamp a sticker on every car. Some people learn how to put the wheel on, so they're very good at putting wheels on, but they don't know anything else about the car. You put that together with a bunch of people in a conveyor belt, which Ford is famous for sort of not inventing the conveyor belt, but this style of working. So you get a bunch of people, and then if somebody who makes the wheels or who puts the wheels on says, I don't want this anymore, or they get sick or something, you can get somebody else in there really easily. Whereas if you were making the whole car yourself and you got sick, we'd be screwed, right? You wouldn't be able to make a car. So there's all of these little tiny pieces to a puzzle, and that allows millions of cars to be made every day. If you want to make that many cars, prices drop, things get more accessible in that sense, because more people can buy cars, because they don't cost $1 million, they cost thousands. And that's because of this process. You don't need to pay brilliant people who know everything about making a car. You can pay people minimum wage who will show up because, that's the only alternative, or that's the best paying job they can find in the area. They help make a car by stamping something or by doing whatever. That's some of the ways in which the infrastructure of mass media works. In a similar way, right? You could write, direct, star in, and do all of this stuff and make your own film, and that would take a lot of time and it would be very difficult to do on scale. Or you can get the rights to a book, you can get 1 million writers, actors, caterers, light people, photography people, you know all the people. If you've ever watched the end of a credits of a film, you know how that works. It's still very expensive, but each person is a little bit of that thing, right? So it's really nobody's one movie. Even though we sometimes do still have writer, director, stars, we usually have thousands of people working on a film. Same goes for virtually everything we get. So it's not just cars, it's also, intangible things like film and music. That's how we've arranged our society. And there are some really good things. We get millions of movies and TV shows and songs, and we can stream them super easily if we can afford internet access and we can afford streaming services and things. It also means, though, that rather than having the knowledge of who made your shoes or who is working on this film, you might know who is the main actor or something, but you probably don't know the thousands. Even the director or the producer probably doesn't know the actual thousands of people working on it, right? It separates us. In some ways, this separation, like I said, is good because you want to be separated from your car in the sense that you're never going to figure out how to make a car yourself, so it's better if you can mediate that. But if doing that means that you are involved in some shady activity, which, let's face it, we probably all are if we look and trace all of our things, all of our connections through different media, then we have to start asking ourselves questions like, should I know where my phone comes from? And do I want to be part of a system that creates these horrible inequalities, and in particular, these living conditions? And possibly, things like child labor, things that I hope everyone would say, like, no, that's horrible. I don't want to be a part of that. You don't have to be a part of that to be a part of that, right? That's part of the new structure of our society, where it's not like you're going next door and being like, hey, you, 10-year-old, go do this for the next 12 hours or else I'll kill you. No, you don't do that. But maybe one of the products you buy through different mediation actually does end up doing that, right? It's one of the sad things about media. It's one of the important things that we study and think about. This whole idea may be sort of offensive. I mean, it should be offensive to you, but don't take it the wrong way and start thinking like, oh, I need to defend myself from these ideas. I don't want to know this. I'm going to close my eyes and close my ears and not listen to this. I mean, that might be appealing. Ignorance is bliss, but I think what's more appealing is to have a better understanding of how the world works and then maybe doing something to improve it, even in whatever little way we can. Lots to talk about, lots to take in. This is week 2, week 1, and if you think of the first as an introduction. I hope that you get a lot out of this. Like I said, I hope you get a lot out of this class. To some extent, I do hope you feel bad, right? You want to feel bad about these things because you're human. If you don't feel bad and you're like, oh, this guy's a commie, I don't want to listen to him, you're contributing to a lot of things you probably don't want to contribute to no matter what, no matter how you feel. So let's think about it a little bit. Let's think about some of these terms, right? Access, industry, infrastructure, and let's think about how they fit together. And if we can do that, I really do think we can make the world a little bit better. Not perfect, definitely. And I'm not saying we need to necessarily overthrow capitalism or something like that, but maybe we should know where our phones come from. Anyway, I look forward to seeing how you do on that challenge and the other challenges that will be on the website. And we'll probably, hopefully, be seeing each other sometime soon. Cheers.